Chapter 13. An account of the letter of the Romans to Judas, and of the treaty which took place between them. From the elder and 320 governors unto Judas, general of the army, and to the Jews. Health be to you. We have already heard of your victories and courage and endurance in war, whereof we rejoice. We have also understood that you have entered into an agreement with Antiochus. We write to you to this effect, that you should be friends to us and not to the Greeks, which have done you harm. Moreover, we intend to go unto Antioch, and to make war upon its inhabitants. Wherefore make haste to acquaint us with whom you are at enmity, and with whom you have a league of friendship, that we may act accordingly. This is the treaty made by the elder and 320 governors with Judas, general of the army of the Jews, that they should be joined to the Romans, and that the Romans and Jews may be of one mind in wars and victories forever. Now if war should come upon the Romans, Judas and his people should help them, giving no aid to the enemies of the Romans by provisions or any kind of weapons. And when war shall come upon the Jews, the Romans shall help them to the utmost of their power, giving no aid to their enemies by assistance of any kind. And as the Jews are bound to the Romans, so likewise are the Romans to the Jews, without any increase or decrease. And Judas and his people accepted this, and the treaty stood and continued between them and the Romans for a long time. Chapter 14. An account of the battle which took place between Judas, Ptolemy, and Gorgias. After this, Ptolemy collected 120,000 men and 1,000 horsemen, and they went to Judas, and Judas met him with 10,000 men, and routed him, and many of Ptolemy's men were slain. And he besought Judas, and humbly entreated him to let him escape with his life, and swore that he would never more make war against them, and that he would show kindness to the Jews who were in all his countries. And Judas had compassion on him, and let him go, and Ptolemy adhered to his oath. But Gorgias, having collected 3,000 men from Mount Sarah, that is, of Idumea, and 400 horsemen, met Judas, and slew the captain of his army and certain of his men. Then Judas and his men advanced towards them, and Gorgias was put to flight, and the greater part of his army was killed or fled, and he was sought for, and no tidings were heard of him, and it is reported that he fell in the battle. Chapter 15. An account of the dissolution of the treaty which Antiochus had made with Judas, and of his march together with Lysias, his cousin's son, with a great army, and of his wars. But when word was brought to Antiochus Eupator that Judas's affairs had gained strength, and what victories he had gained, he was very angry, and broke the treaty which he had made with Judas, and collected a large army, in which were 22 elephants. And he marched with Lysias, his cousin's son, into the country of Judah, directing his course to the city Bethaner, before which he pitched his camp and besieged it. Now when this was reported to Judas, he and all the elders of the children of Israel met together, and prayed to the great and good God, offering many sacrifices. Which being finished, Judas proceeded with the leaders of his forces, and came into the camp by night, and made a sudden attack upon it, and slew of the enemy 4,000 men and one of the elephants, and returned to his own camp until the dawn of the day should begin to break. Then each army was drawn out, and the battle grew fierce between them. And Judas perceived one of the elephants with golden trappings, and he supposed that the king was sitting upon him. So he called his men and said to them, "Which of you will go out and kill this elephant?" And a young man, one of his servants, who was called Eleazar, went out and rushed upon the enemy's line, slaying on the right and left, so that the men turned aside out of his view. And he went forward until he came even to the elephant, and creeping under him, he cut open his belly, and the elephant fell down upon him, and he died. So the king, perceiving this, commanded to sound a retreat, and it was done. And the amount of men of the higher rank slain that day in the battle was 800 men, besides those of the common men who were slain, and those who had been killed during the night. And it was told the king that a certain man of his friends named Philip had revolted from him, and that Demetrius, the son of Seleucus, had gone forth from Rome with a great army of Romans, intending to take the kingdom out of his hand. At which, being much affrighted, he sent to Judas concerning making peace between them, to which Judas assented. And Antiochus and Lysias, his cousin's son, sware to him that they would never more make war upon him. And the king displayed a large sum of money, and gave it to Judas for a present to the house of God. The king also commanded Menalius to be seized, one of the 3 wicked men who had brought evil on the Jews in the days of Antiochus his father, and he ordered him to be carried up to a lofty tower and to be thrown headlong thence, which was done. For by this the king designed to gratify the Jews, since this man was one of their chief enemies and had slain great numbers of them. Chapter 16. The history of the arrival at Antioch of Demetrius, the son of Seleucus, and of his defeating Eupator. After these things, King Eupator marched into the country of Macedonia and then returned to Antioch, whom Demetrius attacked with an army of Romans and defeated and slew, together with Lysias his cousin's son, and he reigned at Antioch. But to him went Alcimus, the leader of those 3 wicked men, who coming into his presence prostrated himself before him, and wept most vehemently, and said, O king, Judas and his company have been slaying great numbers of us, because, having deserted their religion, we have embraced the religion of the king. Wherefore, O king, assist us against them, and avenge us on them. Then he bade the Jews go to him, and incensed him, suggesting to them such things as might provoke Demetrius, and irritate him to fit out an army to vanquish Judas. To whom the king, giving heed, sent a general named Nicanor, with a great army and an abundant supply of weapons of war. And when Nicanor had come into the Holy Land, he sent messengers to Judas to come to him, and did not disclose that he had come to conquer the nation, but stated that he came only on account of the peace which was made between him and the nation, and that they also were under obedience to the Romans. And Judas went out to him with a certain number of his men, who were endued with strength and courage, and he commanded them not to go far from him, lest Demetrius might lay a snare for him. When therefore he had met Demetrius, he saluted him, and a seat being placed for each of them, they sat down, and Demetrius conversed with him as he pleased. Afterwards each of them went into a tent which the troops had erected for him. And Nicanor and Judas departed into the holy city, and there dwelt together. And a firm friendship grew up between them, which being made known to Alcimus, he went to Demetrius and incensed him against Judas, and persuaded him to write and command Nicanor to send Judas to him bound in chains. But tidings of this came to Judas, and he went out from the city by night, and departed to Sebaste, and sent to his companions to come to him. And when they were come, he sounded the trumpet, and commanded them to prepare themselves to attack Nicanor. But Nicanor sought Judas with great diligence, and could learn no tidings of him. Wherefore he went to the house of God, requiring of the priests to give him up to him, that he might send him bound in chains to the king. But they sware that he had not come into the house of God. Whereupon he abused both them and the house of God, and spake insolently of the temple, and threatened that he would demolish it from the very foundations, and departed in a rage. He also took care to search all the houses of the holy city. Likewise he sent his men to the house of a certain excellent man, who had been seized in the time of Antiochus, and put to extreme torture. But after the death of Antiochus, the Jews increased his authority and greatly honored him. And when the messengers of Nicanor came to him, he feared lest he should meet with the same treatment which he had received from Antiochus, wherefore he laid hands on himself. When this was told to Judas, he was very sorry and much afflicted, and he sent to Nicanor, saying, Do not seek me in the city, for I am not there. Therefore come forth to me, that we may meet each other, either in the plains or in the mountains, as you choose. And Nicanor went forth to him, and Judas met him with these words, O God, it was thou who didst exterminate the army of King Sennacherib, and he indeed was greater than this man, in fame, in empire, and in the multitude of his host. And thou didst deliver Ezekiah, king of Judah, from him. And when he had trusted in thee, and prayed to thee, deliver us, I pray thee, O God, from his malice, and make us victorious over him. Then he made ready himself for battle, and advanced to Nicanor, saying, Take care of yourself, it is to you I come. And Nicanor turned his back and fled. And Judas, pursuing him, smote him on the shoulders, which he divided, and his men were put to flight. And there fell of them on that day 30,000, and the inhabitants of the city went out and slew them, so that they left not one of them. And they decreed that that day should be every year a day of thanksgiving to the great and good God, and a day of gladness, and of feasting, and of drinking. Thus far is finished the second book from the translation of the Hebrews.